getting now
back here?
into the prepared speeches, and our first speaker this evening is Phil Shaw. Phil's always been interested in the Second World War, and a book that's he's been reading sparked his interest in finding out more about some of the experiences that hit home. The objective of his speech, which is speech 6, is to select precisely the right words required to communicate your ideas clearly and vividly. So help me welcome Phil up for this speech.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I've been reading a book recently called by Tom Brokaw called The Greatest Generation. And in it, he shares many stories of bravery, heroism, and unfortunately death. These stories were related to him by men and women who served in the Second World War. It got me to thinking that I know a member of the Greatest Generation, and he served in the Second World War, and he had some pretty interesting war stories too. And I wanted to share one of his stories with you tonight. My father entered the U.S. Army Air Corps, now known as the Air Force, in December of 1942. He went for specialized training for about 20 months, and then in August of 1944, he and 10 other men were chosen to go for training on a B-29 Super Fortress, which was a long-range bomber that was developed by Boeing in the early 1940s and was being used almost exclusively in the Pacific Theater in the Second World War. So they went for some training. They trained together for about 7 months. And then in March of 1945, they were sent to the island of Saipan. Saipan was a very strategic island. It was located in the Marianas Chain, and it was about 1,300 miles from Japan. So they could take off and they could come back and land because the B-29 had a range of about 3,500 miles. This is a picture of, that's my father there. This is his crew, and this is a B-29. You can see it's a very large plane. It's a pretty neat picture. Now, the pictures I'm going to show you and a lot of the information I'm going to share with you tonight came from a website that one of his crew members put up a couple of years ago. It's a great website. I mean, it's very close to my heart, but it's a good read for everybody. So if you're interested, I'll definitely give you the site. Another picture that I love is this one. This is some B-29s flying in formation. And this is actually Mount Fuji right here. And this is my father's plane right there. So it's pretty neat. This made the cover, this got in Time magazine, and it was also used by Boeing as part of an advertising campaign. So they were off to Saipan in March of 1945. They got their orders that their first bombing mission was going to be April 1st, 1945. They were going to go fly from Saipan and bomb a factory that was making engines, which were going in many of the airplanes that the Japanese were using in the Second World War. They took off, everything was going smoothly, and it was about a 7.5-hour flight. They made it fine, they got over Japan, and all of a sudden things changed. They saw a light go over their wing, and then there were a bunch of radar-controlled spotlights, which just lit up their plane like a Christmas tree, as a gentleman said on the webpage. And so they knew they were in trouble. Also, the B-29s had been flying at 30,000 feet up until just days before, but they were hitting a jet stream, and when they dropped their bombs, the bombs would go way off course. So they were ordered to fly at 6,500 feet, which is a little over a mile high, and a very large plane like a B-29 was a big target for the Japanese shooting at them from the ground. So they're lit up, all of a sudden aircraft fire is going off like crazy all around them, and they're freaking out. I mean, the oldest person on the plane was 26 years old, the youngest was 20, and the rest of them were 21, 22 years old. So this was a very scary experience, but it was about to get a lot scary because, boom, just like that, number 4 engine got a direct hit on it and exploded in a ball of flame. So they're now running on 3 engines, but worse, about 9 times out of 10 when an engine gets hit, the plane goes down, at least in the Second World War, it's going to go down, often taking the crew with it. So they've all got their headsets on, they're waiting for the word to eject, to parachute out of the plane, hopefully land on land, and probably be taken prisoner by the Japanese. But that was better than going down with their plane. But fortunately, one of the crew members was able to cut off the gasoline to the engine. The fire eventually went out. They actually went on and dropped their bombs, and they turned around to head back to Saipan, but they realized that they're not going to make it back. They had lost 500 gallons of fuel, and they they only had 3 engines, so it wasn't looking good to make it back to Saipan. Fortunately for them, on March 17th, the Marines had just won the battle for Iwo Jima. I'm sure all of you heard of Iwo Jima, famous monument, and one of the most famous pictures of the Second World War, where the Marines are shown putting the flag up on Mount Suribachi. So Iwo Jima was about 600 miles from Japan as opposed to 1,300 miles, so it was perfect. They radioed ahead, they said we're going to land there, and another good thing was only a couple days earlier, the runway had been plowed to about 10,000 feet. So it was perfect for a large plane like a B-29, which was crippled, to come in and land. They came in, the landing went smoothly, and they got out of their, oh, I do want to share this with you, because this is a picture of them landing on Iwo Jima. I think that's so cool. They made the cover of Brief magazine, which I don't know what that was, but I guess it was for the troops. But it says emergency on Iwo, and you can see them landing here, just coming down on, looks like a dirt runway. And you can see these propellers are moving, but this one over here isn't. So that's the engine that had gotten hit. So pretty cool to see that picture, especially for me. They landed safely, and after they got on the ground, all the Marines came up and they were admiring all the damage that had been done to their plane. And they got out of the plane, just happy to be alive, and all of a sudden they hear gunshots. You know, what's going on? And the gunshots hit the plane. The bullets hit the plane. They said, what's going on? We're on American ground here, supposedly. Well, the Marines had won, but there were still plenty of Japanese who were hiding out in different places on the island and shooting, taking pot shots at anybody in a U.S. uniform. So the bullets went high, so it didn't hurt anybody, but they were kind of freaking out. The Marines, who had seen everything, just put their cigarettes out and said, damn it, and they drove over, picked up the 3 Japanese, took them prisoner of war. And my dad said he would never forget that as they drove off, the Japanese were waving and they had big smiles on their faces. So he didn't think they were trying to hurt them. He thought, just as a Japanese custom, they had to shoot their last bullets off because they shot pretty high, and he just thought it was funny that they were smiling as they drove away after they had shot at him. So they ended up catching a flight back to Saipan. They flew 13 more bombing missions after that, and then on August 6th and August 9th, some other B-29s dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then on August 15th, the Japanese surrendered. So that was it for their bombing missions. They did make 3 other runs, though, for dropping off supplies to POWs after the war. And then a couple months after that, they received letters thanking them very much for the supplies that they had sent, and saying that they actually helped to save some lives because some of the men were starving as POWs. So that was a great thing that they were able to do for them, too. In his book, Tom Brokaw calls them the greatest generation because they overcame many challenges. They lived through the Great Depression. They helped fight and win the Second World War. Unfortunately, over 400,000 Americans died and didn't come back. And they helped to go on to make the United States the superpower that it was after the war, and to be the leader in technology, medicine, and so many other things. So I am very grateful to this generation, and I'm very proud to say that my father is a member of the greatest generation. And Toastmaster.